Welcome to the National Button Society's Capturing the Magic of Buttons series of button craft workshops. My name is Sylvia Liszka Durell. I am a member of the National Button Society and serve on its Creating with Buttons program committee. This workshop features flowers for a button bouquet. I have made quite a few button bouquets, and it never ceases to amaze me how the simple act of stacking colorful buttons together can create such a lovely display. This workshop is one of 4 that the National Button Society is providing in response to its members' increased interest in using their non-collectible buttons in artistic ways. This series of no-harm button crafts and the other button craft ideas on the National Button Society website support its mission to preserve all that is beautiful and historic in buttons. Access to this series is a membership benefit, along with quarterly bulletins and online button education resources. You can see more about what membership offers you online at nationalbuttonsociety.org. To start, I'd like to show you some of the button bouquets I have created. This first one is in a pretty ceramic salt shaker. It was a gift to my sister-in-law. For this one, I used felt cutouts of flowers to back the buttons. I used a clear salt shaker into which I stuffed orange tissue paper. In this third one, I added interest to the bouquet by adding wire curls. I love using this kind of blue and white shaker. The pattern complements the buttons so well. This delicate vase invited a variety of colors of buttons. I think the vase and the buttons create a Victorian feel. I found this Santa toothpick holder in a thrift store after Christmas. It was fun adding the button Christmas tree to his sack. This bouquet features flower petals that I bought at a craft supply store. Again, the pretty blue and white of the shaker is eye-catching. This vintage planter is larger than the other containers. The button colors I chose match the room I displayed it in. And this last one was a thank you gift to an elderly friend. I still see it on her table every time I visit. The bright yellow ceramic watering can is so cheery. When I go out to the thrift stores, I always look for salt and pepper shakers, cups, and small vases that I might use for button bouquets. This first one caught my eye because I thought it would be a good way to use my many black and white and gray buttons. This orange butterfly shaker could host a variety of colors of buttons. It'll be easy to add stems to this pot. Some foam and moss will hold them. Now this gray metal sprinkling can has a shallow receptacle, but I like the rusticness of it, so when I use it, I'll need to come up with a way to anchor the flower stems. I bought 3 of these shoes at an estate sale recently. Here is what I created with the first one. In the next slide, I'll show you what supplies I used to create it. And finally, this tall vase is what I chose to use for this button bouquet demonstration. To build this button display, I started with a black cloth-covered belt buckle. The detail on the shoe inspired me to choose black glass buttons. In the most no-harm way, I sewed the buttons onto the belt. I clipped on a vintage earring as well. The belt buckle was a bit wobbly in the shoe because the sole section isn't very deep. So I found some black plastic craft buttons to wedge in around the sides of the belt buckle and then glued them in place. Now on to today's demonstration. Here is a list of the items I used to create this bouquet. Because the vase is white and it is adorned with pretty pink roses, I decided to use white and pink buttons. In addition, I had on hand floral wire and tape, category 6 wire, which is the plastic coated wire we standardly use to safely mount buttons, pliers, and floral foam. You might want to add artificial greenery to your bouquet. That is optional. It can be useful to fill in empty spots in your bouquet design. First, I measured the vase so I could be sure I bent my floral wire to be tall enough to make flower stems that were of an appropriate height for the vase. The vase measured about 6.5 inches, so I made sure I made the stems about 9 inches or longer. The stems can always be trimmed if needed to make a nice balance with the flowers. I had to cut up smallish pieces of the foam to fit down through the narrow neck of the vase. The foam will hold the stems upright. My first button is a simple one. I stacked 4 buttons and topped it with a pearl. Because I didn't like the look of the green wire showing on the sides of the white pearl, I decided to use white category 6 wire. I first bent my floral wire to a workable height and threaded the last button through it. Then I brought the white wire down through all of the buttons. To tighten the head of the button to keep it straight and not wobbly, use a small jeweler's pliers. I twisted all 4 of the wires tightly to the base of the last button. Then I wound floral tape around and down the wires. I didn't go all the way. A lot of the wire will be hidden within the vase, plus we need a sharp point to anchor into the foam. I was inspired to create some fancier button flowers by using lace and rickrack I had on hand. I used low-heat hot glue to stick the trim onto the buttons. The glue can be easily scratched off if necessary. Also, using category 6 wire, which is bendable, I linked 6 white non-transparent buttons and knotted the wire to make a circle. In my first attempt at this, I used transparent buttons. See the upper left-hand corner photo. But I quickly discarded them because I didn't like seeing the wire behind the buttons. So non-transparent buttons work better in my opinion. In this example, I wired a center button on. To finish, I glued a big plain plastic button to the back to hide the wiring. Here are photos of the variety of button flowers I created. The bottom button on this one is trimmed with small rickrack. This plain stack has a decorative top button. And on this, the bottom button is trimmed with a bit of lace. This circle of buttons is mounted on a shiny pink shanked button. You can see how the back looks on there. The shank made it easy to add the stem. This row of cascading buttons are separated by a pearl. I will demonstrate how I made this one. Another couple of circle buttons. The first with a clear button in the center, and the second with a pretty white button with floral detail. This one has a bit of rickrack glued onto the top of the bottom button. Another stack topped with a pretty flower-shaped button. And this flower is topped with a dome-shaped button. In order to do this, I needed a deeply inset button to hold the shank. I'll show you an example of this as well. This final one is another simple stack of buttons. Put all together and arranged in various heights, here is how my button bouquet turned out. For the next section of the workshop, I will demonstrate how to make the circle and cascading button flowers.